Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call the May 24th, 2022 Longmont City Council regular session to order. May we have a roll call, please?
Mayor Peck.
Present.
Councilmember Doggle-Faring.
Here.
Councilmember Martin.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Rodriguez.
Here.
Councilmember Waters.
Here.
Councilmember Yarbrough.
Here.
Mayor, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Let's stand for the pledge, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
As a reminder to the public, this meeting is being live streamed. You can watch it also on the longmontpublicmedia.org/watch and also at on YouTube. Anyone wishing to speak at first call public invited to be heard will need to add his or her name to the list outside the council chambers. Only those on the list will be invited to speak at the first public invited to be heard. Speakers who do not place their names on the list will have the opportunity to speak during public hearing items this evening or at the final call, public invited to be heard on any item at the end of the meeting. We have two meeting minutes to approve. The first one is the April 26th minutes. Can I have a motion? Thank you. All right, that's been, the April 26, 2022 minutes have been approved by by Councilor Waters, seconded by Councilor Yarbrough. Let's vote. And that passes unanimously. The second one is the May 10th, 2022 regular session minutes. Thank you. All right, so those have been, that motion's been moved by Councilor Waters, seconded by Councilor Doggle-Faring. Let's vote. And that passes unanimously as well. Lucienne, do we have any agenda revisions?
No, we do not, Mayor.
Thank you. Do any of the councilors have anything they want to add to items to future agendas?
No, I just wanted to let you know that I'm going to pull something from the consent agenda, just in advance.
Thanks for the heads up there, Marcia. Okay. Can we have a city manager's report?
Report, Mayor, Council.
All right. Do we have any, it doesn't look like we have any special reports or presentations. So this is the first call public invited to be heard.
And we did not have anyone sign up for first call, Mayor.
Thank you. Yep, first time we've never had that. So now we have the consent agenda. Lucienne, would you mind reading the title of the first reading ordinances?
I would be happy to. All right, ordinances on this consent agenda will be set for second reading and public hearing on June 14th, 2022, unless otherwise noted following the item title. Item 9A is Ordinance O 2022-20, a bill for an ordinance conditionally approving the vacation of 4 utility and storm drainage easements within the exterior boundaries of Lot 2 of Longs Peak Industrial Park / Sunset Diagonal Business Park Minor Subdivision B, generally located at 1820 Industrial Circle. Item 9B is Resolution R 2022-89, a resolution of the Longmont City Council authorizing loans from the fund balance in the city's fleet fund to the DDA Construction Fund and the DDA Arts and Entertainment Fund, and providing for repayment of the loans from the DDA Tax Increment Income Fund. Item 9C is Resolution R 2022-90, a resolution of the Council of the City of Longmont, Colorado, finding that the petition for annexation of parcels of land located in Boulder County, State of Colorado, known as the McIntosh Lake Annexation, generally located north of Lakeshore Drive, south of State Highway 66, west of Harvard Street, substantially complies with the Colorado Revised Statute, Section 31-12-1071. Item 9D is Resolution R 2022-91, a resolution of the Longmont City Council approving Contract Amendment Number 1 to the intergovernmental agreement between the City and the Colorado Department of Human Services Office of Behavioral Health for a grant for a law enforcement assisted diversion program. Item 9E is Resolution R 2022-92, a resolution of the Longmont City Council approving the amendment to the intergovernmental agreement between the city and the Colorado Department of Human Services Office of Behavioral Health for contract amendment number 4 for original contract number 21 IHJA 160883 for Longmont Public Safety's LEAD program. Item 9F is Resolution R 2022-93, a resolution of the Longmont City Council approving the intergovernmental agreement between the City of Longmont and State of Colorado Department of Human Services Office of Behavioral Health for a co-responder services program grant. Item 9G is Resolution R 2022-94, a resolution of the Longmont City Council approving the intergovernmental agreement with the University of Colorado Boulder and the Longmont Department of Public Safety for the provision of law enforcement and administrative personnel. Item 9H is Resolution R 2022-95, a resolution of the Longmont City Council approving the First Amendment to the intergovernmental agreement between the City and University of Colorado for professional services for hydraulic fracturing water quality monitoring study at Union Reservoir. Item 9I is Resolution R 2022-96, a resolution of the Longmont City Council approving the intergovernmental agreement between the City and Boulder County for the temporary use of a pedestrian bridge at Hile Valley Ranch open space. Item 9J is Resolution R 2022-97, a resolution of the Longmont City Council approving the intergovernmental agreement between the City, Boulder County, and the City of Boulder for collaboration on a regional grant management system. Item 9K is Resolution R 2022-98. It's a resolution of the Longmont City Council approving an amendment to the intergovernmental agreement between the City of Longmont and the State of Colorado Department of Local Affairs for grant funding for Defense Council First Appearance Grant Program. And item 9L is Resolution R 2022-99, a resolution of the Longmont City Council approving the intergovernmental agreement between the City and the State of Colorado Energy Office for a grant to develop a benchmarking portal.
Thank you, Lucian. Councilor Martin, you wanted to pull an item?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Peck. I would like to pull items F, H, and J.
Does anyone else want to pull items? It doesn't look like it. You want to make a motion to move it then?
Back on. Sorry about that. Yes, I move the consent agenda less items F, H, and J.
Okay, looking for a second. All right, so the consent agenda has been moved minus F, H, and J by Councilor Martin, seconded by Councilor Waters. Let's vote. So that passes unanimously. Thank you. So now we're going to come to the ordinance on second reading and public hearings on any matter. A is ordinance 02022-18, a bill for an ordinance authorizing a long-term water supply agreement between the City of Longmont, acting by and through its water utility enterprise, East Cherry Creek Valley Water and Sanitation District, acting on its own and on behalf of its East Cherry Creek Valley Water Activity Enterprise, Incorporated, Arapahoe County Water and Wastewater Authority, and United Water and Sanitation District. Is there a staff report on this? No, it doesn't look like it. Do we have any questions from council? No. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak on ordinance 2022-18? Seeing none, I ask for a motion for a council member to move this.
So moved.
All right, ordinance 2022-18 has been moved by Councilor Martin and seconded by Councilor Yarbrough. And that passes unanimously. The second one is ordinance 2022-19, a bill for an ordinance amending Chapter 13.20, Sections 13.20.010, 13.20.070, and 13.20.90 of the Longmont Municipal Code on definitions for public lands, facility, and shelter reservation, and hours of use. Do we have a staff report on this?
No, Mayor, but what I did want to say is since Sandy covered for me when I was out moving my daughter back, I would be happy to answer any questions from council on this item.
Okay, thank you. Are there anybody in the public that would like to address this ordinance? Seeing none, are there any questions from councilors? Yes. Oh, there you are. Councilor Hidalgo Ferry.
Thank you, Mayor. This has come up at the liaison for the NGLA, and there has been concern over the change in the park hours. One of the things that came up is, we have residents who maybe walk their dog or, go and will swing on the swing for a little bit and then go home. And it would be after, it would be, well after, an hour after sunset. So, I guess I just wanted some clarification on, because I've heard a couple of things from staff that, no, you got to clear out, or no, you can hang out, but as long as you're not there for hours, or they're really targeting, undesirable behavior. So really, what does that mean when we say the parks are closed 1 hour?
So I'm going to have
after
Sandy jump in too to help me on this. I think
Yes.
there's one provision in this that really talks about as you're moving through the park, and that's a key provision. So if you're moving through the park and you're not consistently staying in a location, that's an allowed use under the definition of it. And David actually can jump in this other piece. And I think the other depends, are you moving through the park? Are you just staying there? Is it a more extended time frame? But generally, I think I would say is if you're just kind of moving through, then there's not an issue there. Is that?
Okay. And then I guess, so then I'm going to go back, so the moving through, if somebody was, playing with their kids, swinging on a swing, or I don't know who would be playing with their kid at night, but that late at night, not in my house, but maybe swinging on a swing for a little bit, maybe 10 or 15 minutes, would that warrant them being asked to move, or?
Mayor Peck and Councilmember Hidalgo Ferring, what we talked about last time was a little bit of this nuance around enforcement, right? The idea is to make sure that the parks are safe for the community. That's the goal. As Harold mentioned, moving through the park, walking through the park, using them as transportation is allowed in the code. If somebody is, walking and playing on a swing for a few minutes, my guess is that we're probably not going to cite them as if they're tagging a shelter or doing something like that, right? I mean, the idea is to keep the park safe, and of course, we would ask our public safety folks to use their judgment as they have to use every single day on everything that they're looking at in front of them.
Okay. And then, so just for clarification then, if the individual is doing something, maybe smoking or doing something that's undesirable for that, and they're maybe not even part of the neighborhood, that would be something that the police, the public safety is really looking to identify.
That's where we're asking them to use their best judgment. Is something
Yeah.
that's really going against the ordinance, right? The idea is that the parks are closed, and so, if somebody is in there, trying to loiter or, like I said, tagging something or doing something that's after dark, if they're staying there, then, they probably will be asked to move along because the park is closed.
Okay. And then, and I think, in the case of neighbors, people walking their dog, it's intended
That's
use
not a
and
problem.
it's not a problem.
That's right.
So, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I'll give you an example where I was out with actually someone from public safety during the day. So you evaluate they evaluate what's going on. In this case is a gathering. You had alcohol use. And so they're watching and they're taking in information, and then they're taking their judgment and then dealing with the issue that they've seen. And part of this is people call in too. And so we recently had calls about people were in the ditches starting fires, open fires, and it didn't come into dispatch, but it came in. If that were to come into dispatch, then we dispatch, we assess, and we go through the process just like we would anything else.
Okay. Thank you.
Would you like to move that ordinance?
Yes. I'll move ordinance 2022-19.
All right, so 2022-19 has been moved by Councilor Hidalgo Ferring, seconded by Councilor Yarbrough. Let's vote.
Can't we still have discussion after?
Oh, I'm sorry. You certainly may.
Number 8 went on.
No.
Do I get the floor?
Do you want it?
Do you
Yeah,
want
I
it?
do.
You
Okay,
can
go
have
for
it
it.
first, I don't care.
How do we, just following up on the questions from Councilmember Hidalgo Ferring, what do we do now? Right, we have an 11 o'clock closing time. I'm guessing whether it's 11 o'clock or an hour after sunset, the patterns of behavior will be that are allowing and not, it will be the same.
Same process.
Enforcement will be the same. So what do we do now?
I think it's what we said, is you're looking at it, you're evaluating, it's education, it's talking to folks. That's a big piece of it. You know, it's not coming in and saying, we're going to ticket you. It's, here are the hours of the park, here's what we expect, here's what we need you to do, and...
So the response to NGLA
Right.
members or anybody else is, there's nothing,
No.
because of changing the ordinance, there's nothing that's changing in terms of enforcement. Only that the hours in which enforcement occurs may change in terms
Occur early.
of people not being in. I have to say, this time of year, an hour after sunset, it's almost 11 o'clock anyway. So,
Right.
but nothing. I mean, I know these are part of the concerns, and it's nothing different than what we've been doing for the last 30 years. Is that correct?
Correct.
Yeah. All right.
Thank you, Mayor Peck. Is this an appropriate time to move, I mean, I support this ordinance and I will be voting for it, but is this an appropriate time to move some guidance on enforcement and let the staff vote on that? I'm sorry, let the council vote on that, excuse me.
I guess that's a hard question for me to answer because enforcement is inherently an operational component.
Yeah,
And so...
and it's not, it's probably policy, but I'll tell you what, I'll just agree to calmly withdraw it and nag everybody afterwards if it's not appropriate.
Yeah, I think understanding is the key for me.
Okay.
And we can have that conversation.
Sure. Then what I would like to do is say that we have some safety upgrades that are going to be made to the restrooms in the parks as each park is renewed on the standard cycle. And I think we upgraded Lanyon in advance because we were having problems there. At least there's a camera there. I'm not sure if there's the
No,
locking
we
doors.
only upgraded the lighting in the pavilions, but there's more that we're going to work on generally in the park.
Right. So the upgrade model is present and operational now at Affolter Park, and one may enter the restroom safely because when someone's in there, it's locked, and when they come out, it unlocks, and you always know when there's someone in there,
Correct.
which makes it a lot safer at night. And, you know, there's an obvious way of abusing a park when you're walking through it at night if the restroom is closed. And since it would be safe for it to be open, I would like to move that as parks are renewed, the enforcement policy for restrooms is not to close them when the park closes, but leave them available to people walking through the park.
Is there a second for that motion?
Yeah, I was waiting for Harold
Oh.
to say, is it appropriate or not, before expecting a second.
So what I would say at this point is I think there's other components that we have to have in place. It was interesting. I had a resident talk to me about this issue. And I said, you know, when we've evaluated the challenges that we faced, it wasn't one park, it was multiple parks, and I just started going down the litany of, you know, it was Lanyon, it was Carr, it was Golden Ponds, it was Affolter Park, it was, what's the park near Fall River, David? Stephen Day Park. And I think what I said to him is, this is what we needed to do to control the issue and get our hands around the issue today. I think there are many components that will need to come along with it. It'll need to be cameras. It'll need to be smart lighting. Because the other challenge that we're seeing in this is it's not just the fact that they're open for use. It's the fact that the destruction that's actually occurred in many of our restrooms, close to, what, $500,000? In cost, and those are when restrooms are open.
Yes, sir, but you do understand I'm saying this should only be applied to the hardened and locking restrooms as they come into operation, correct?
Correct, and I think what we would have to say is we need some of those other components in there to ensure that if hardened can mean a lot of things. I think we talked about this. I've seen examples in schools where they've literally stolen the urinals. And so I think those are things we have to evaluate to go, what's the risk? And I think we want to look at keeping them open because on the other side of the equation, our park staff have to clean up. And so we understand the issue. And so I think as long as we have the ability as staff to evaluate and ensure that we have all the parameters in place to ensure that we don't go into another round of vandalism in the restrooms, I don't see an issue with it. But I think it's more than just the hardened facilities.
So does that mean I should withdraw this now and keep nagging, or does it mean that we can vote on this, but you're going to decide what hard enough is?
I think I need that capability, is to decide what hardened enough is.
Okay, then let's move that we will leave the restrooms open for people crossing the parks when the city parks operations declares them to be hardened enough on a case-by-case basis.
I can second a case-by-case basis, but I do want to...
Yeah, they have to be hard enough.
And I'll second that.
Do we have any discussion on this motion? Yes?
Oh,
Okay, well, I would have to say that I am not going to vote for this because I think it's too early in the operational component to make a hardened motion when we don't know where it's going yet. I would rather wait and see maybe next year, actually, after we've worked through this, to see where we are and get a report from. My other problem with it is that even though they lock when you get in and unlock when you get out, we don't want people sleeping in there and in those bathrooms. So to leave them the ability to be able to go into them at any hour makes me nervous. I would rather wait. So I'm not going to vote for this motion.
Number 8.
Is 5.
And-
That's,
Oh.
Number 8, Councilor Waters.
I'll just go by 8, that's okay. I'm going to vote against it as well. Not because I don't think it's a good idea. I think there's a bigger policy frame when we get down the road. I think this does cross the line in terms of operations. I think it's too early for us, and this, on a Tuesday night for us, to be given this kind of direction. I see some of our public safety folks out here. I think everybody understands the intent. I just think, I just am not ready to start getting to that level of direction unless I'm clear on what the policy frame is and what the objectives are we're trying to accomplish. Not just in terms of restrooms being open, but what we're trying to create, what we're trying to accomplish through this whole approach with parks and civil behavior in the parks, et cetera. So, not that it's not a good idea. I just think it's too early, and I think it's too detailed or too narrow.
well, I don't think a narrow incremental beginning would preclude a broader policy at the end, but for the mayor's information, the installation at Affelter precludes people sleeping in the restroom because after a short period of time, if the person has not exited the restroom, an alarm goes off and they can't sleep in there, and it's recurring. So,
Okay, thank you for that. So let's vote. The motion has been made by Councilor Martin, seconded by Councilor Hidalgo-Ferring on leaving the restrooms open after they have been, what you had said was hardened? Okay. So let's vote. So that fails with Councilors Hidalgo-Ferring, myself, Tim Waters, Mayor Pro Tem Rodriguez, Councilor Yarbrough voting against it, and Councilor Martin voting for. Thank you, everybody. So now we're going to go to items removed from I'm sorry, what
The
motion?
original motion was just to pass the ordinance.
That's right.
Yeah, so we're going back.
So now we are going back to the main motion to pass 22-19. That was moved by Councilor Hidalgo Faring, seconded by Councilor Yarbrough. Let's vote. And that carries unanimously. Thank you. So now we're going to the items removed from the consent agenda. Councilor Martin, you are up again. You pulled F, H, and J. Ordinance F, this was resolution R 22-93.
Thank you, Mayor Peck. Yes, this is the co-responders program, and I support the co-responders program and will not vote against it no matter what answers I get right now. But I do have a question in terms of maximizing the utility of the program. Do we have data on the frequency of calls in which there is a mental health crisis aspect during business hours or versus evenings and weekends when co-responders are not available?
I'll jump in with you too, James.
Okay, my name is James Brown. I'm the Assistant Chief in charge of Collaborative Services, which is where our core unit is. And so as far as the actual data goes, we're constantly analyzing the data, and we're taking a look at the most effective hours where we should have our core team staffed. I think that's maybe kind of what you're asking. And so it's a constant evaluation. In fact, as we take a look at it, so last year, the core team had about 5,000 contacts. Half of those were directly related to mental health crisis calls. As far as the ratio, as far as how many calls are police responding to that have a mental health component to it, I don't have that exact figure available. And, you know, it might be difficult to get an exact figure without having information as far as, you know, on the calls that we get, where we get the information that there's a mental health, someone's in crisis or there's an issue going on, we have that information and we have that data. But I would speculate that there's quite a bit more calls that we go on that have that element piece to it that maybe we're not aware of in the moment or isn't part of the information that we're receiving at the time. I'm not sure if I'm answering your question.
Well, no, because the biggest concern I have is when a call happens when there is no co-responder available, but maybe there should have been. For example, I was in the middle of a mental health crisis call, not for myself, but for a person staying in my home, and the co-responder staff wasn't on duty at that time. So I think that there are two things that should be happening. One is that at dispatch time, that information should be recorded, and second, that the corresponder hours should be adjusted accordingly. Because it doesn't make sense to me that most of the calls would happen during business hours. And what are the corresponder on-duty times now?
With varying degree, they're run from about 8 a.m. to 10 o'clock at night. That gets adjusted for seasonal adjustments and when we see trends or we see needs to adjust those hours. So it's a flexible, it's not a set that they're only here during these time frames. We take a look at the data, our calls for service, and try to schedule our resources during those times where they're going to be highly utilized. And, you know, part of the long-term vision of this is to continue to grow that and have more availability of the co-responder resources. I think the ultimate goal would be to get it to where we do have that 24/7 coverage. We're not there right now, but that's what we're working towards in the future.
Okay.
So I wanted to add to that. So that is a conversation that Chief Artis and I are having, and that's part of what James is going to look at. I'm used to calling him JB. But what he's going to look at, and the example I will give you in terms of what he's going to bring to the scenario. So when we were having the staffing issues in terms of patrol, what they started doing was evaluating call volumes, evaluating what was happening, really identifying peak times of calls, and then they started shifting patrol to really get at to ensure that we had the appropriate staffing at the right time. That's the work that he has to undertake now so that we can really watch the data and ensure that we're where we need to be until we can essentially get to the point where we have a 24-hour operation. And every day shows its own characteristics. Every season shows its own characteristics. Thursdays, for some reason, Thursdays from about, 4 to about 10 o'clock tend to be high volume. That's the data they're going to be watching so that they can adjust to ensure that we can have them on as often as we can, but we know we're trying to figure out how do we eventually get to a 24-hour operation with CORE.
Okay, and that's a perfectly good example, explanation. And I would also like to ask about weekends and holidays. Is it yes, no, case by case?
Yeah, no, I mean, we, just like any other police services, we operate during holidays, during weekends. Again, it's all data-driven right now, but just because it's the weekend or the holiday doesn't mean that our core team's not going to be there. There may be some holidays that our core team isn't there for whatever reason, but as a general practice and as a general rule, the weekends or the holidays don't play into the equation. It's we need to have our resources here and serve our community at the time that our community needs us, and so whatever those times dictate is those times where we'll be there. So.
Okay, thank you very much.
And to add to that, what I've learned from them when I was during that time, certain holidays have their own characteristics too. And so there's certain holidays where they say, probably not this one. There's other holidays when you look at mental health and things, they may go, we really need you here. So that's part of all of the work that they're looking at.
Councilor Martin, would you like to move that resolution?
Okay, I move resolution
2022-93.
Thank you, 2022-93.
So it's been moved by Councilor Martin, seconded by Councilor Hidalgo-Ferring. Let's vote. That passes unanimously. Councilor Martin, the next one is yours too. It is Resolution R 2022-95.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Peck. This is about monitoring the water quality in Union Reservoir. And I just have a couple of questions about what we expect the sources of the contamination to be. I understand that we have not found any to date, which is an excellent thing. I also understand that some of the planned excavations around Union Reservoir are now off the table, and that the only ones remaining are on the opposite non-Longmont side of Union Reservoir, still close enough to be a concern, but that's all there is left. So my question is, do we expect that the possible sources of contamination are already in the water table under the reservoir from earlier fracking attempts or operations, or do we expect that we are looking for contamination that would result as a result from new fracking or from re-fracking of, for example, the night well?
Mayor Peck, members of council, Annie Noble, Environmental Services Manager. I think we don't expect to find any fracking fluids or any contamination in Union Reservoir, but we feel that it's important to continue to test. We've been testing for 3 years. We sample monthly between, I think, April and November, and we sample 5 locations in the reservoir. We also do groundwater sampling at 5 locations north of the reservoir. We also test not only for these fracking fluids, but also nutrients, algae, volatile organics. We have, an ongoing baseline monitoring study that we're looking at all kinds of constituents. So, we don't expect to find fracking compounds, but, we're continuing to monitor for them, and we're also monitoring the quality in Union Reservoir. I mean, we know that algae is a concern. We're having hotter summers, and there's also, separate from our testing, we test, the rangers, I believe, test for E. coli at the swim beach on a weekly basis. So we're doing all kinds of, a comprehensive evaluation of the quality of the reservoir. So we hope that we don't find any of these constituents, but we are continuing to test. So we've been testing for fracking fluids for 3 years, and this IGA is for a continuation of that for once a month for the summer periods. So I hope I answered your question. Yes. Okay. Okay. Any other questions?
Looks like we're good.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. So would you like to move that resolution?
Stupidly turned my, yeah. All right, I move adoption of Resolution R 2022-95.
Second.
So it's been moved by Councilor Martin, seconded by Mayor Pro Tem Rodriguez. Let's vote. And that passes unanimously. And the next one is also yours, Councilor Martin. It is Resolution JR 2022-97.
Thank you, Mayor Peck. Yes, I have a very strong interest in upping the city's game when it comes to securing grants straight across the board, and I'm very happy that the city is doing a lot of stuff. Yeah, come down here, Becky, because my questions are software. I'm really happy that we're working on that, and if this means good, upgrading the software, then I am for it. Here are my questions. I think that the council should be aware of what is going on the grant front earlier. The council obviously has to award permission for a specific application, and then has to award acceptance for money when it comes. But I would like us to be able to be aware of the pipeline, and based on policy beliefs and considerations that we have, to know whether the right stuff is in the pipeline and to be able to say something about it if it's not. Will this new software enable us to have any more awareness of what's going on that front than we have now, which is none?
So this is a software for the grants that we give to human service agencies. Mm-hmm. And so this software is grant management for us internally and our funding streams.
Okay, so this is not document management for applications at all?
No, this is our grant process where we give funds, correct?
So Mayor Peck and Councilor Martin, council members, yes, that there is the documents are coming to us. This is for our grantees that we fund through the Human Services Agency set aside.
Okay, right. So my questions are not appropriate for this vote, but while I have the floor, I'd really like to say that I still think it's important that council has more transparency into the application process than we have now.
And so when we can talk about, I know that there's an info item coming in terms of the federal funds and that we're going to give to you all that basically says, here's what we qualify for, here's what we don't qualify for, here's what we're in the pipeline for. I know Sandy just gave me a draft on that. Mm-hmm. And then I know Chief Artist just restructured one of his positions for grant management work. Becky has one of those positions, and we're going to start working holistically to kind of answer some of those questions.
Yeah, an example of doing the right thing is the active developments login map, where anybody can look anytime and at least know where to start and who to start with. And so that was my concern, and I apologize for not understanding what this particular software was for.
Oh, thank you.
Okay. Counselor Martin, do you want to move that then?
Okay, so I do move adoption of Resolution R 2022-97.
So that has been moved by Counselor Martin, seconded by Counselor Yarbrough. Let's vote. That passes unanimously. We are now at general business, and I believe there's probably a presentation on participation in Colorado's paid family medical leave insurance program.
Mayor Peck, before Gina gets started on her presentation, I just wanted to kind of tee this up a little bit because it seems like there's been a miscommunication on what family applies to in this context. So I just wanted to be really clear that what we're talking about is Family Medical Leave Insurance Act application to the city and employees as an employer.
Okay.
So there's no rule or law that we, the city of Longmont, can make that would affect other businesses or any of their decision-making. I would say that, most private businesses do fall under this insurance act. There are a few exceptions where people can opt out. Municipalities are one of those. So the conversation tonight is to discuss what family is, what it is not, why our recommendations are what they are. So with that, I would love to turn it over to Gina unless Harold wanted to add anything else.
I think there's also the piece of this is us as an employer,
Okay.
not us as a city, where we're not making this decision for other employers in the community. I wanted to reiterate, it's for us as an employer. And then I'll jump in as Gina's going.
Yeah, so we'll turn it over to Gina to give you some information, and then happy to help you walk through the conversation.
Great. Thank you.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and members of the City Council. My name is Gina Perino, and I am the Compensation and Benefits Manager for the city. Tonight I am here to talk with you about FAMLY, which is the Family and Medical Leave Insurance Act that was passed in 2020 by Colorado voters. And essentially what it is it is 12 weeks of paid leave for an individual to take in which they will receive a portion of their pay for a qualifying event. So now I think let's start with what is family. So we went through that. Now let's talk a little bit about what it does.
I'm going to actually start your screen up so that you can move it.
I apologize.
You're fine.
That way you can move your slide. Yeah.
This is only my second time doing this. I'm not a pro yet.
Neither am I.
Well, I'm in good company. So the one thing I think that we should start with, now that we know what family is let's talk through how it compares to what the City of Longmont already offers. And we've prepared a slide for you that shows that. For our full-time regular benefited staff, the entry-level amount of sick leave we offer is 96 hours per year. During that leave, employees are compensated for 100% of their salary, and if they get into leave usage donations, they're compensated for 75% of their salary. And currently, full-time benefit employees, we have 857 that fall into that category. The next group we have are our part-time non-benefited and our temporary employees. They receive up to 48 hours of paid sick leave, and it's accrued by pay period. And one thing I want to say about that is a new program that the state of Colorado just put into place so that temporary and part-time employees also accrue sick leave. Secondly, if they are on that approved leave, they're getting paid 100% of their salary. They are also eligible for a portion of leave donations in which they would be receiving 75% of their salary. So now if we look at that compared to what family offers, it is the 12 weeks of paid leave if you meet the qualifying event. However, the leave is only a percentage of your salary, and it falls between 37% to 90% of your salary to cap at $1,100 weekly. The cost of the program is 0.9% of an employee's salary, with 0.45% being contributed by the employee, and the other 0.45% is contributed by the employer. One thing that makes it unique is they allowed municipalities the ability to be able to opt out of this program. The reason why that would be attractive is because if we have employees that really want to participate in this program, they can do so. The state has allowed employees to opt in on their own and receive the exact same benefit as if they were part of the employer group. They are not required to pay the full 0.9% of their salary. They would only be required to pay the 0.045% that they would be collected anyway if they were an employee. Why that becomes attractive is if you have employees that want to opt in, they can. However, if we opt in as the city and we have employees that don't want to participate, don't feel like they can afford to participate, then they don't have the ability to opt out. Once the city opts in, it is as a whole, and there is no ability for people that just don't want to participate or wouldn't use the benefit. Therefore, our recommendation for this would be that we would opt out and use it as a tool, though, to highly educate our employees coming in, signage in our buildings, which is all very closely regulated by the state, that if we do opt out, we have to have signage stating that employees do have the right to opt in. We have to notify new employees that they do have the right to opt in. And we have to make sure that they're well informed. One thing that we've looked at to ensure that this happens is including this information in all new hire packets and in all new hire orientations. So the employees are very well aware that they do have this option even though the city opted out.
Gina, let me add one other thing too. In addition to making sure that employees understand their options, right? So if the city did opt out, as Gina said, employees still can opt into the program at the same cost to them. And the city is willing to administer that program for them. So we would be collecting that and remitting it to the state on their behalf. So not everybody who's opting out is doing that, but it's important for us to make sure that people understand their options. By opting out, we're not requiring everybody to do it. It doesn't create that requirement. And at the same time, we will absolutely assist people who determine that this is something that's beneficial for them to make sure that they're able to participate in the program. Okay.
So just to reiterate why our recommendations are to opt out is, one, that staff that wishes to participate can do so in either scenario. It's focused on the ability for staff to choose what they want to do and really to make the decision on if it's something that they feel would benefit them or if it's something that they feel would not benefit them. And staff has indicated that they would actually rather choose to participate versus being forced. We actually put out a notice to all employees and gave them the option to either come tonight to make public and open comments, or we gave them an email address that they could send to the HR email, or some have even just emailed Sandy. So we have gotten a fair amount of comments, and quite a few of them have been from people saying that they would prefer to not participate and have the choice to do so if they determine it's right for them.
I would add that we also had the conversation with the employee advisory group, and so you all know the employee advisory group is made up of representatives from across the organization. We only have one administrative rep on the group. We had this conversation with them, and I think once we got through and once everyone understood it, because it was really kind of hard to understand at first, they really reiterated the same component. There were a couple of individuals that said, we want to do it, but everyone else was really at the point of saying, give us the choice as to whether or not to participate. And, and they also talked about the fact that I think this is about $500,000 that we would have to contribute. And they said that's $500,000 that we could look at in terms of salary. And the reason why I think they said that to me is because they can participate at the same contribution rate no matter what we choose to do. And so that, just to know, we were really trying to engage our staff, and that's what we actually, if you haven't heard about the employee advisory group, those are the kind of things that I bring them. I meet with them monthly, and those are the kind of things that we talk about.
Just to add a little bit of additional information, I have been emailing with the state of Colorado because we have had some employees that have been interested in it, and they have asked for what does the path look like? Is it an open enrollment? How do they get in? So I actually have been emailing with the state, and I got an answer back this morning, and they don't have a clear path yet. I know. It's only going to be in 6 months. They do know right now that it will be a full online enrollment and that employees will have the opportunity ahead of time to opt in. One unique thing is by the city actually collecting contributions and remitting them on the quarterly basis, that will actually take some of the work out of it for the employee, because the way it stands now is that an employee that opts in on their own or a self-insured employee would actually be required to go in and quarterly report all their earnings and then remit their own contribution, where the city would be doing that for them. And one last thing I found out today that I thought would be pertinent information is that I think that initially people, when they look at this, think that it's going to be just a replacement of income. And the way it's actually going to be administered today is that employees will actually have to file a claim, and it will go, so they're administering it similar to unemployment. So the employee would file a claim, it would go before a committee for review, and then they would either approve or deny the claim for the leave to be paid. So it doesn't appear that it's quite as easy as initially thought.
Are you open for questions at
Yes,
this
ma'am.
point? Okay, yes, Councilor Martin.
Thank you, Mayor Pack. I think you've answered two of my questions, and I'm just going to, go over it again. Sure. The city is going to administer the process for employees who want to opt in.
Yes, ma'am.
So that's a good thing. It doesn't cost more to opt in than if the city as a whole opted in per employee.
That is correct.
That's also good. And then we don't know yet whether it's open enrollment all year long or whether they're just going to be windows. So that was the biggest question, and we can't answer that yet.
That is correct.
Okay. So one other thing is which groups of employees already have long leave provisions? Is that the public safety contracts that have that, or who does?
Our full-time employees have sick leave benefits that accrue over time as they're employed within the city. It's all full-time, including those that are collective bargain.
Okay, I misread the council communication then, because I thought it said that some employees have it and others don't, and I wasn't thinking about part-time. Yeah, okay. The other thing is, can we assume that an employee's family benefits begin after they have exhausted their accrued sick leave benefits?
So I believe...
I don't know that we know that yet, Councilmember Martin. I mean, you can have both. I mean, you can have benefits through the city and also participate in family. But I don't know that there's necessarily, I mean, you can't kind of double dip with respect to leave share, for example. If you choose family, then you're not eligible for the leave share program also. But I'm not sure that we know necessarily. Yeah, you know
I do. Actually, I didn't understand your question. I apologize.
Okay.
So the way that it is designed is that they want family to run concurrently with FMLA. So if you work for an employer that has FMLA, they want that family to run concurrently. So an example that I can give you where we would actually have multiple things possibly in play is if someone has a baby. So they take their 12 weeks of leave and say they have opted into family, so then they're on family. So that would run concurrently. And at that point in time, say they needed additional time after that. Once they come back from their FMLA and go into an unpaid leave status, they would be able to accept leave donations at that point in time.
Okay, that's a good answer, but that was not my actual question.
Okay.
My question was, suppose that I have 4 days of sick leave, and I use that to take care of getting my mom into hospice, and then it turns out that it's going to be a long haul in hospice, and I want to use my family benefits then. If I apply for family benefits, they don't go back to the time when I was using sick leave and didn't need those benefits. They would start after I had exhausted my sick leave.
That is correct.
Thank
It
you.
is a full leave replacement. So it is a income replacement program. So you would exhaust your leave and then you would use the family, which the city allows anyway. You can exhaust your leave prior to going on an FMLA. So that would still work well with that program for that employee that chose it.
Well, and I do want to point something out that we do that's not common as employers. So a lot of employers, they run FMLA concurrent with sick leave and or the sick leave donation program. We don't do that. We don't start FMLA until you're done with the sick leave program, and so then that comes after, which when you look at it, it's actually a greater benefit for the person versus running them concurrently. And so those are distinctions that when you start evaluating all of this, we said, it just, we're putting more on the table. So you could use your sick leave, you could do a sick leave donation, and then you could utilize FMLA. And there's not many employers that actually approach it that way. But I wanted to bring that in because that's a nuance to what we do.
Councilor Hidalgo-Ferring.
Thank you, Mayor. So, actually, your statement helped answer my question with the FMLA, so thank you for that. So the city does not have like a sick leave bank. Do we have?
The city does not have a sick leave bank. What we have instead is a leave share program. Mm-hmm. So if I were to go on leave and then I exhausted my leave and I still needed additional time, whether on FMLA or if I'm even on an unpaid leave status, I would apply then for donated leave.
Okay.
And I can say, you never know, but the city's employees are very generous.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you. And then the other, I saw that, okay, even if the city opts out, employees can still opt in. So my concern with that is, how would it be more of a process for the employee to be able to get back on if the city as a whole has already opted out? I guess I just kind of wanted to visualize what that looked like.
Sure. So that would be what it will either be an open enrollment period or a period of enrollment. Mm-hmm. And what I got from the state, because I specifically asked that question, is what does this look like? Is it paper forms? Is it cumbersome? And it looks like there will actually be a dedicated website. They'll sign up as a user, and then they'll be able to go on and sign up for the program fully online.
Okay. And then how come, so now if the city just says, okay, we're going to stay with the program, and if you choose to opt out, how come, but did you look at that as an option? Would that even be an option?
Sure. It is not an option. So
Okay.
the city as a whole can opt out, but if the city as an employer as a whole opts in, then individual employees cannot opt out. Every employee is locked in at that point in time to the plan.
Okay, so then in the end, this actually gives employees more choice and
Yes.
Autonomy over what they choose, what's best for their family and themselves.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
It lets employers make a decision to fit their personal circumstance as opposed to us making a decision for everyone.
Okay, well, that clarified a lot for me. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
So seeing no one else in the queue, I do have a point of clarification for myself. If the city decides as a whole, if they wanted to opt into this program, does the program that we have in place now go away, or do we have double programs?
It would be double programs, Madam Mayor.
Okay.
It's meant to be an addition to something existing or a replacement for a small business that perhaps has nothing.
Okay, thank you for that.
Yes, ma'am.
So now it looks like staff is looking for a direction here. They want to know if we're going to, if a formal vote to opt out of participating in the state family program, if we want to direct them to do that, or move forward with automatic participation in the program. So can we have a motion here? Either to opt out totally and go with what we have, or to go with the state family. Do I have that correct? Those are our two options.
Well, if we opt out, it means we're not in it as an organization
Exactly.
or employer, but our employees can still participate in it.
Okay. So as an employer, one of the options that they're looking for direction is, as an employer, should we formally vote to opt out of the program? Or do we just want to move forward with automatic participation in the program? These make clear, sorry.
And staff's recommendation is to opt out.
Right. Thank you. So,
I make the motion that the city have the option to opt out so that all employees of the city will be able to opt in or opt out of family. Did I say that right?
Yes, ma'am.
okay, so your motion is to opt out as an employer. Thank you. Do we have a second? So the motion to opt out of the family program through the state was made by Councilor Yarbrough, seconded by Councilor Waters. Do we have any discussion here, or are we good? All those in favor, let's vote. Yep. So that passes unanimously.
Wonderful. Thank you, Madam Mayor and members of the City Council.
Thank you, Gina. Before we go on to the rest, do we need a bio break here for 5 minutes, or we want to go through? All right. Looks like we're all good. So we are at the final call, public invited to be heard. Anybody out there want to talk? I see no one in the public. So we're at mayor and council comments. Do we have any comments from, looks like Councilor Waters?
Thanks, Mayor Peck. Two comments. One, just reflecting on the questions that Councilmember Martin had regarding a co-responder program, and the answers were all good ones. But it did remind me that we have had multiple conversations at times about external evaluation of city programs, and in many cases, those that are in public safety. That's where, we've got a handful of pretty innovative programs, and while Commander Brown, talked about the data, and I have no doubt what Dan Eman has collected and what he's doing, that there is a lot of data. That's a little bit different than somebody from the outside coming in and evaluating, not just are you doing what you say you're going to do, but are you achieving what you say you're going to achieve, or the outcomes, not just the outputs. So I know a couple of years ago we encouraged you to budget to do at least 3 program of external evaluations of city programs on an annual basis. I hope when we see the budget, because that'll be a question I'll ask when we get into it, just as a heads up. I think we ought to keep doing that. I think we ought to, part of the response to the question is, yes, here's our external evaluator, like we did with the Rewind and LCJP programs a couple years ago, number one. The second comment would be, everybody today in the country is horrified by what we saw in Texas and what's happened over and over again. So I'm reminded as I watch what is unfolding, what we were able to get started, not to accomplish, in the fall of 2018 and into the winter of 2019, and what came to the council ultimately as a report. And in that report, 4 areas of common ground that regardless of where one is on a continuum of gun enthusiasts and rally for the rights to moms demand action and folks who would like to see way more regulation than what's happening in the country right now. Regardless of where people were on that continuum, we went through a process that gave people a chance to sit and listen to one another, and they did. It was a remarkable moment in my recollection. And there were those 4 areas. Addressing the causes of violence in our society, and firearms being one of the instruments used, but how do we reduce risks of violence generally, and then what does it mean in terms of firearms? Number 1. Number 2, educating about the use of firearms, and from safe storage to, what one does in, firearm safety programs, and what people ought to know not to do, kids in particular, when there are firearms around. Number 3 was to do more and better with mental health, and I know this is a theme that we hear from the mayor on a regular basis, and it's a concern shared by everybody. And the 4th was advocacy, and that could mean a lot of different things to, whoever is advocating for policy solutions. But I hope as we continue to experience the angst that goes along with what's happening in the country, that at some time we might come back to those 4 areas of common ground on which we can work together to reduce risks of violence generally in this community.
Councilor Hidalgo-Ferring.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Council Member Waters, for those comments. I learned about it in the classroom, and I was debating whether or not to even say anything because I didn't know how I would react. But as a 3rd grade teacher, this situation really hits home. In my classroom, I have this large cupboard right next to the door, and for the last 15 years, I've always had that cupboard or one similar, depending on the classroom I'm in, by the door, because I think about how I could barricade the door in the event of a school shooting, how I could protect my kids. Enough's enough. I've heard from so many teachers today through my, not just colleagues in St. Vrain, but throughout the state and throughout the nation, through NEA. Enough's enough. And I really do hope that we come together and we come up with solutions, because it's not going to be one answer. It's going to be a myriad of answers and topics that we need to discuss. Mental health is something that I'm very passionate about. My daughter survived 3 suicide attempts. I have a son with autism, and he struggles daily. And so, I know that mental health is a big impact. But our culture of violence has to be addressed. We have to be open and okay to talk about it and criticize it and make changes to fix it. My husband owns guns. He's a gun enthusiast. I am not, but we manage to set aside our differences, and we have things locked up. We are safe. We keep them out of the hands of our kids. They weren't even in our house when my daughter was a threat. They weren't even on this side of the Continental Divide. They were with my brother-in-law. So that education piece also needs to play a role in families making the right kinds of decisions to keep their families and our community safe. I do want to applaud our public safety. They've done a lot over the years with the core and leads team. In 2013, when my daughter attempted, and we were scared, she was, stepping, just being really aggressive, and we called the police. And this was prior to the change to public safety. And I tell you, 30 seconds in, I realized I made the biggest mistake, because they had her pinned to the floor and treated her like a criminal, and she was in crisis. And I've seen how much public safety has evolved over the years, and I commend the work that they do with the core team, the lead team. My family is living proof that these programs work, and they save families. And I want to be able to build up our strengths so we can keep our community safe. We thought there wouldn't be a shooting in a church. It happened. There wouldn't be a shooting in a movie theater. It happened. In our schools, it happened. Nowhere in our grocery stores, it happened. There isn't anywhere that's safe. And so it is up to us as lawmakers, it is up to as a city, staff, and a community to take the lead and keep our community safe. So, thank you.
Thank you, though. You're correct. I agree with both comments. And I do remember the community conversation that we had, and it was good. And just as an FYI, the commissioners reached out to the different mayors and want to know if we want to have a county conversation so that we are all on the same page about how we want to support our cities. So we will be having that conversation, but I would like comments from councilors as to what you want me to bring to the table in that conversation. And then at some point, sooner rather than later, I would like us to have a special meeting with, it would be open to the public with no public input. Just the council needs to sit and talk about this and decide what we want to do as a city. So that will be a conversation I'll have with the city manager and see how we can work that out sooner rather than later. So thank you for those comments. Anyone else? City manager, do you have any comments?
No comments, Mayor, Council.
Thank you. City attorney, Eugene?
No comments, Mayor?
Thank you. Can we have a motion to adjourn? Thank you. Second. So it's been moved by Councilor Waters, seconded by Councilor Martin to adjourn. Let's vote. That passes unanimously. Thank you, everybody. See you next Tuesday.